he has been okay. He has been doing cartoons for how many years now, Mr. Angelo? Have
Oh,
you
I've been
been
doing
doing cartooning?
cartoons since 2008.
Okay,
Right,
since 2008. Uh-huh.
so 14 years.
And 14 years. So, Mr. Angelo Lopez, who will share his journey as a Filipino-American editorial cartoonist. So, and he will also share helpful tips on how to make an effective editorial cartoon. Um, if you have any questions regarding, you know, uh, anything about cartooning in the U.S. or his views about uh, the current events in the Philippines, please do uh, post your questions to our chat box, uh, and we'll be answering your questions to our Q&A later. So, Mr. Angelo Lopez, please take it away.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much. My name is Angelo Lopez, and right now I'm going to share the screen and stuff. So um, here, so share. Okay, and for the screen, let me make sure. Okay, so can you see this? So yeah, my name is Angelo Lopez. I am the editorial cartoonist for the Philippine News Today. The Philippine News Today is a Filipino-American newspaper based in the San Francisco Bay Area. So, today I'll give a talk on my journey as a Filipino-American cartoonist. So, this picture is something I did, several years ago, and it's sort of an accurate portrayal on on um, on my inner life. So how did I start making cartoons? I just drew, um, as much as I just remember drawing on any little scrap of paper. So sometimes when my parents would make their bills and stuff, they'd see little drawings of Charlie Brown and Snoopy in their electric bill or their water bill. So I think my first big influence as a cartoonist was Charles Schultz, Peanuts. I love Charlie Brown and Snoopy and Linus and Sally and Lucy and stuff. And I just love drawing those characters all the time. As I got older, I discovered Marvel used to have these reprints of the old Stan Lee, Jack Kirby Fantastic Four. And I love those comics. And I grew to love Jack Kirby. He was the comic book artist who did the Fantastic Four, and he and Stan Lee created most of the heroes that you see in Marvel movies today. And and after that, I did after that, I just became sort of a comic nerd and stuff. I would go to the library all the time, and I would, just look at all the books I could on like comic strips, comic books, and comic history. And I used to work in a library, so I highly recommend if you want to learn about cartooning, go to your library. I don't know if the Philippines uses the Dewey Decimal System like the American libraries do, but if it does, go to the 741.5973 section. That's where, if you go in the library, you'll be able to find all the books on comic strips and comic books. And a lot of libraries nowadays, they have a section just for graphic novels and stuff. So if you want to learn more about comics and stuff, go to the library. Um, how did I become an editorial cartoonist? In 2008, I saw a newspaper and stuff of the Tri-City Voice. And so my wife and I don't know how we picked it up, but we picked it up. And the Tri-City Voice is a community newspaper that covers the eastern part of the San Francisco Bay Area. So I don't know if you know the Bay Area, but Fremont, Milpitas, Newark. So my wife suggested I try sending my cartoons to this paper. So if you go to the editorial page, there's a section that talks about editors, um, you know, um, editors, and it gives their email address and their phone numbers. And so I just gave it a try. I emailed the editor and with some samples of my work, and I was surprised when the editor said, "You know what? Why don't you come to our office and and we can talk." And I was lucky enough to become an editor, a political cartoonist for the Tri-City Voice from 2008 to 2012, and I loved it and stuff. I mostly did local issues, but as years went on, I began to do more and more national issues. So when the Tri-City Voice let me go as cartoonist in 2012, I felt kind of depressed because I thought, gosh, I really love doing editorial cartoons. So I tried to find another place where I can do editorial cartooning. And my parents, when they do their groceries, they go to Filipino-American supermarkets, and they would always take home these Filipino-American community newspapers. And Lisa, my wife, got the idea, why don't you try out for this newspaper? And so I tried out for the Philippine News Today, which at that time was called the Philippine News. And, it's like the Tri-City Voice. I would look and find the editor and email them. And then I briefly visited them, and I became the editorial cartoonist. And to me, it was a great gift because it gave me a chance to reconnect to the Filipino-American community, because I used to have a lot of Filipino-American friends in high school and college. But after I graduated from college, um, I just lost touch with a lot of those friends. And so for around 20 years, I felt very disconnected from the Filipino-American community. So this cartoon job for this Philippine-American newspaper gave me a chance to reconnect to the community, but also just to learn more about what was going on in the Philippines. Okay. So I was asked to talk about the influences of my political cartoons. And so when I went on Facebook, I connected to a lot of political cartoonists, and I'd message them, and they tell me about the cartoonists who influenced them. And one cartoonist recommended that I get this book, Art for the Masses. And The Masses was a socialist magazine in the early 20th century. And I love the radical leftist cartoonists in that magazine. Boardman Robinson, Art Young, Robert Minor, and a whole bunch of others. And their cartoons would defend the right of workers. It would speak out for racial equality. It would criticize the Jim Crow laws that were around at the time. It would condemn the lynching of Black people that was happening a lot in the South at that time. It would advocate for contraception for women and the right of women to vote. And so a lot of that stuff was, within my politics and stuff. So if you look in the middle, um, this is the cartoon by Art Young, one of the cartoonists for the masses. He did cartoons from the 1890s to the 1930s. So I was also influenced by a newspaper called The Catholic Worker. It was founded by Dorothy Day and Peter Morin. They're Catholic leftists. And like the masses, the Catholic Worker uh, advocated for workers' rights, advocated for racial equality, and it was a strong advocate for human rights. And the paper would highlight his artwork that was in woodblock. And I love that look. And so in the right is one of the artists from the Catholic Worker, Fritz Eichenberg. And I just love that look. And so those two, the art from those two magazines and newspapers had a big influence on my art. So, um, you know, so this is a new site. I was born in America, and I've only been in the Philippines 1 month my entire life. And so I had to do a lot of research to get an opinion on issues and learn about the issues. So if I don't have an informed opinion, then it's difficult for me to think of ideas for cartoons. So these are sites that I use, and I still use, to do research on issues that's happening in the Philippines. I love Rappler, especially Rappler's YouTube page. They have this thing called Rappler Talk and Newsbreak chats. And when they speak in English, I learn a lot because I don't know Tagalog, but when I listen to them, they're very insightful and I learn a lot. ABS-CBN, Bulatlat, the Philippines Daily Inquirer, Davao Today, CNN Philippines, the Union of Catholic Asian News. That's an important site for me because I learned that the Roman Catholic Church has been a strong defender of the poor in the Philippines, and they've been strong critics of Duterte's extrajudicial killings. And they've also been critical of the Marcos family's attempts to change history. So that's a good site for me to learn about how the church is fighting against authoritarianism. Human Rights Watch, and the New York Times. So the process I use for making a political cartoon. If I have time, I also have a video. So if I finish this talk and I have time, I'll show you a video of how I actually do the make my cartoon. But I research my cartoons so I can develop an informed opinion. And then after I do that, I just start sketching. And when I come up with a drawing that I like, I put my drawing on the printer and I copy the drawing onto either Bristol board or drawing paper. And then I start to, I first use a brush to ink the outlines of the drawing. And then I use a Crocquill pen to crosshatch and stuff. And then after I finish inking when I finish inking my cartoon, I scan my cartoon into my computer. And then after I scan it in the computer, I use Photoshop if I want to add collage, or if I want to just do typography and stuff. So that's sort of my process and how I do my cartoons. So okay, so I was asked what inspired me to make cartoons about human rights in the Philippines. So I think I was inspired to focus on human rights because my heroes, my political heroes, all work on human rights and stuff. So Martin Luther King Jr., the Kennedy brothers, Carlos Bulasan, Pete Seeger, Philip Veracruz, Larry Itliong, Grace Paley, Dorothy Day. All of those my heroes, they all try to speak out for the marginalized in our society. And they all try to speak out for those in society who had no voice in the political system. And so I want to use my cartoons to try to do the same thing, to act as a voice for those who have no voice. So this particular cartoon, I learned about the Lumad. And I learned that paramilitary forces and security forces have been targeting Lumad schools and red tagging Lumad teachers. And so, according to what I've learned and from what I've researched, um, multinational corporations, they desire the land that the Lumad live in because the land that the Lumad live in are rich in natural resources. And so it's in the interest. So these corporations are trying to drive the Lumad out of their land so they can, get at their resources and stuff. And I think the reason why they're attacking schools is because it's easier to exploit an illiterate population. But if a group is educated and knows how to read, they can learn about their rights, and they can learn how to defend themselves and stuff. So that's my thought anyway. I think another issue that that concerns me is how critics of the government, especially during the Duterte years, have been targeted for harassment and have sometimes been killed and stuff. And one of the groups that have been targeted have been the law profession. And so this cartoon is about that. And so I'll read my caption. I think from 2016 to 2021, 61 lawyers, prosecutors, and judges have been killed during the Duterte administration. And this has a sort of chilling effect on anybody who wants to point out something that the government is doing wrong. So, okay. And this is another thing I've learned about, something called endo. I guess in the Philippines, um, there's a law that says if a worker works for 6 months, they become classified as regular workers, and then they're entitled to the benefits that a regular worker gets. So if so employers try to bypass this law by contracting workers to work 5 months, and if they work and before the workers reach that 6 month period, they're let go, and then the employers wait a certain period of time, and then they contract these same workers to work 5 more months, and then the cycle continues. And I think, in my personal opinion, I think that's exploitative and stuff. And um, I'm not exactly sure what I know Duterte promised he'd do something about it, but I don't think anything's been done. So, and this last cartoon about is critical of extrajudicial killings. I'm not a fan of extrajudicial killings. I guess it's for those who don't know, extrajudicial killings is where the Duterte has given the police impunity to kill people who are only suspected of drug crimes without defending themselves in the court of law. But as well as uh, you know attacking extrajudicial killings, I'm also fairly critical of the government's attempts to harass critics of extrajudicial killings. And so I guess journalists, human rights activists, leftists, and clergy have all been red tagged and harassed for criticizing extrajudicial killings. So, yeah, okay. So I've shown a few of my cartoons that deal with the Philippines. So these are a few cartoons. My next few cartoons will deal with issues facing the Filipino-American community. So, the Filipino-American community is just as diverse as any other community, but in the Philippines, in the Filipino-American community, there's a large segment who work in the care industry. They work as nurses, they work as caregivers, they work in the medical profession. But in the past 3 years, the Filipino-American nursing population has been deeply affected by the COVID pandemic. So in 2021, while Filipino-American nurses make up 4 to 5% of the total American registered nursing population, 25% of the registered nurses who died in 2021 are Filipino-American nurses. So, and the reason for this is because uh, many Filipino-American nurses tend to work in units like intensive care, where they're more exposed to COVID, and so they're in greater danger of getting the, um, the virus. So. Another issue that Filipino-American workers face, or Filipino-American community faces, and the wider Asian American community faces, is the rise in violence against the Asian American community. And I'll read this thing I put below. So I didn't want to forget the statistic. From March 2020 to December 2021, over 11,000 hate incidents were reported to Stop AAPI Hate, an Asian American group that monitors um, uh, incidences of racial violence against Asians. But this is not something new in American history. There have been other incidences and periods where there was in American history where there was violence and discrimination against Asian Americans. So in the 1800s, The Chinese Exclusion Act was an act that um, you know that stopped Chinese immigration to America, and it was sort of a culmination of discrimination and violence against the Chinese immigrants who came to America to work the gold mines and to help build the transcontinental railroad. The Watsonville riots was an incident that occurred in 1930. For a week, in early 1930, a white mob um, harassed and terrorized the Filipino-American community because some Filipinos danced with white women. So in World War II, the Roosevelt administration um, interned over 100,000 Japanese Americans in camps, even though these Japanese Americans posed no security threat to the nation. J. Edgar Hoover, who was the head of the FBI, said that that the Japanese American population were not a security threat. So the only reason that the Japanese Americans were put in these camps was because of prejudice. So and Vincent Chin was a Chinese American, and he was beaten to death in the 1980s by two white auto workers because they thought he was Japanese American. And in the 1980s, there was a lot of hostility towards Japanese Americans because of the intensifying competition between the Japanese auto industry and the American auto industry. And I think the last thing in here is September 11th, when Asian Americans who were Muslim or who were mistaken for being Muslim were discriminated against by a lot of people. Uh, so in this last two cartoons, um, well, actually for this series, one of the things that Filipino Americans and Americans in general are worried about is the growing radicalization of the Republican Party. Um, for the past 20 years, and especially since Trump came to office and entered the political scene, um, there has been a growing normalization of white supremacy, Christian nationalism, and the acceptance of crazy conspiracy theories within the Republican base. And you know, my cartoon was partially inspired by my brother-in-law, who was at that time an anti-Trump conservative. But I know many moderate and conservative Republicans who were kind of horrified at what's going on in their party. And I was hoping that moderate and sane Republican and sane conservatives would be able to fight and regain control of the party. But I don't have as much confidence in that anymore. So I think one of the things I was asked was, what's my thought on the situation with Trump? So, so one of the big challenges of this country in the United States is how do we bridge the divide between Trump supporters and the minority groups that are often targeted with right-wing hatred. And yeah, I don't really know. It's something that worries me and stuff. But I have to, I think that many Trump supporters had some legitimate grievances. Uh, I just think that they're targeting those grievances at the wrong target, I guess. In the 1990s and 2000s, these Trump supporters, many of the Trump supporters come from working class white communities in the Midwest and the South. And those communities were hit hard when the manufacturing jobs that used to give them middle class living were outsourced to different countries. And so, these communities began to and when the jobs that remained in these communities paid half as much as the jobs that disappeared. And so you see after when that began to happen, you begin to see like a rise in crime, a rise in hopelessness, um, you know, um, a lack of interest in education, growing drug problems, rise in suicide rates. So, so I can understand why they feel aggrieved, even though I don't agree with some of the hatred they sometimes push towards minority groups. And as a minority myself, I always want to tell them, we're not your enemies. We're not the cause of your problems and stuff, And I think as long as the Republican Party is the party of right resentment, Filipino Americans and other minorities will always be vulnerable to becoming the target of prejudice and hatred and stuff. So we have to find some way of reaching these Trump supporters who are from these communities and trying to help them so that they don't see us as the enemy. So I think the last part I'm going to talk about, how do I fight disinformation and stuff. And this one cartoon is about Marcos and stuff, right? This cartoon was inspired by a series of articles that Rappler had in 2019. It chronicled how the Marcos family has had a disinformation campaign to try to rewrite history. So, they're trying to whitewash the human rights abuses of the martial law period. They're trying to hide the fact that Marcos's crony capitalism, you know, tanked the economy and made the Philippines one of the most. By the time when in the 60s, the Philippines and Japan were two of the most promising economies in Asia. But by the time Marcos left in 1986, the Philippines had one of the most dysfunctional economies in Asia. So, and it scares me how the Marcos family was able to rewrite history. So, with that in mind, I'm grateful that a group of Filipino cartoonists invited me to um, join this Facebook group called Pitik Bulag. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's a group of Filipino political cartoonists, and they're collaborating with Facts First to use the visual arts to help curb disinformation. So, I'm grateful, and he's a wonderful cartoonist, and I've been very honored to help out. And actually, this is one of my cartoons and stuff for Pitik Bulag. And I was asked to briefly talk about the decline in editorial cartooning in the U.S. So yeah, it's really bad. So a lot of editorial cartoonists are losing their jobs and stuff. In the 1990s, I think the internet began to siphon off ad revenue that used to go to newspapers. So as newspapers began to decline in revenue and go out of business, more and more editorial cartoonists begin to lose their jobs, right? And so, and it's the big challenge that editorial cartoonists have today is how are we going to earn a living while doing our cartoons? Like for me, I work part-time, or at least I used to work part-time, and then I worked full-time, but I did my cartoons on the side. So I did my cartoons part-time when I had a full-time job. In the beginning of the 20th century, there were around 2,000 editorial cartoonists in America working in newspapers. In 1957, there were 275 editorial cartoonists working full-time in newspapers. In 2007, 84 editorial cartoonists worked full-time in newspapers. And today, there's just under 30 American editorial cartoonists working full-time. And you can see the numbers are going down and stuff. I don't know what the situation is like in the Philippines, if it's healthier or if it's going through the same decline. But for American political cartoonists, I think we're trying to figure out how we can, you know, earn a living that doesn't have to do with newspapers. What other way can we and still reach a wide audience? So, and this cartoon, I just wanted to let Rappler know, since they're sponsoring this talk. I think all Filipino and Filipino-Americans who cherish democracy, we admire Maria Ressa for winning the Nobel Peace Prize, but we also admire all the Filipino journalists who are doing work to, hold the line, to keep the Philippine government accountable, to fight for democracy, and to fight authoritarianism in the Philippines. So here, I'm gonna stop sharing now. I have another thing I could share. I don't know. Um, I have a video that I'd like to share. It's just to show you how I do my cartoons. So here, okay. So I have this, share. Okay, so this is my, you know, this is my cartoon. This is how I do my cartoons. I'm sort of old school. So, you know, I use Crocodile pens. Um, I use super black India ink, uh, waterproof India ink. And usually I print out my drawing onto my drawing paper, but for the past 2 weeks, I've been in my in-laws' house helping them out. So I brought graphite paper, and I'm going to use graphite paper to trace the drawing onto the Bristol board. So here's the graphite paper. And I'm using one hand because my other hand has the camera. So I will try to use one hand to trace this cartoon, which is penciled. And I taped it to the Bristol board, and I'm going to put the graphite paper in between the drawing paper and the Bristol board. And then I'm going to start tracing. Since the drawing is in pencil, I'm going to use ink to a pen to trace it so that I know what parts of the drawing I've traced and what parts I haven't. So yeah, so with my one hand in the camera and my other hand and tracing with the pen, I'm tracing away. So yeah, after I finish tracing, I take my brush and I dip it in ink, and then I start inking the outlines that I traced. And you know, what I'm doing, the reason I use a brush is I want to do thick and thin lines. And so I'm doing this thick and thin lines and stuff. You want to use a brush that has a good point and stuff, and where the I guess the brushes don't separate and stuff. The brush I'm using now is kind of an old brush, so I'm probably gonna throw it away after a while and stuff. But you know, you want a nice brush. What I'm doing now, if you notice, I'm not connecting the lines and stuff. A few years ago, I went to an art director and to show my artwork, and the art director suggested that I not connect the lines, that I break up the lines a little bit so that my drawings could breathe. So ever since then, I've done that, and I think that I'm very grateful for the art director's suggestion. So I'm brushing if you want to look for a cartoon, there are a lot of good brush cartoonists, who do good brush work. But if you're looking for a cartoonist who does great brush work, look at Bill Watterson. Bill Watterson was a cartoonist who did a comic strip called Calvin and Hobbes. And I don't know if in the Philippines, Calvin and Hobbes, if you know that cartoon, but it's a wonderful comic strip and stuff. So, uh, you know, um, if you just want to, if there's only one cartoonist that you can look at, Bill Watterson's the cartoonist to look at. His stuff is wonderful. So yeah, so there I am inking away, and pretty soon I'm going to show you how to cross hatch. So now I've finished outlining my drawing, and now I'm going to use a crocodile pen, and I'm going to cross hatch. And when I cross this, so I'm going to dip the pen in the ink, and I'm going to start cross hatching. See, there's the point. When I'm doing cross hatching, I'm thinking of shading, I'm thinking of volume, and I'm thinking of texture and stuff. And I love kind of cross hatching illustrations. And if you want to know who my influences are, and who influenced me and how I crosshatch. These are some illustrators and cartoonists who influenced me. Garth Williams. He's the illustrator of the book Charlotte's Web. Um, John Tenniel. He did the black and white illustrations for Alice in Wonderland. Pauline Baines. She did the artwork for C.S. Lewis's Narnia series. Who else? Maurice Sendak. He did the artwork for Where the Wild Things Are, and Robert Crumb. I love his artwork. I love the cross hatching. He's an underground cartoonist, and I love all of the work. But I guess with Robert Crumb, some of his stuff is a little bit X-rated and stuff. So so I just want to give a little warning about that. But if you can ignore the kind of pornographic images and just focus on the cross hatching, it's just wonderful cross hatching work. So here I am busy away. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start darkening this corner. And there's a thing in cartooning called spot blacks, where you put little areas or spots of black within a drawing to pop out the drawing and stuff. And so I'm cross-hatching, but I'm going to make that one of my areas of spot blacks. It's a technique that most cartoonists and illustrators know about and stuff. They may use a different term, but I learned that as spot blacks. It's something I learned in. I learned a little bit of it in college, but I also learned it from just looking into the Cartoonist. So this is the final ink. So after this, I'm going to scan it, and then I'm going to put lettering in it with Photoshop, and then it'll be finished. So this is what I do: brush, Croquill pen, India ink, Bristol board, drawing paper. Then I scan it in the computer and I Photoshop it, and just have fun. Because as a cartoonist, if you're doing cartoons and you're not having fun, you probably shouldn't be cartooning. So, okay, I finished my stop sharing. Okay, I finished my little presentation, and I just want to thank all of you for listening in and stuff, and I want to thank all the people who invited me to this talk. So I think it's going to be a question and answer thing now. So I guess if you can, I'll let whoever wants to speak. And but thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge. We also welcome cartoonist Zach. He's already present. Zach, are you there?
Yes, isang tasang kape. So good morning, everyone. Yeah, I wasn't able to introduce Angelo, and I'm really thankful to isang tasang kape for helping introducing film cartoonist Angelo Lopez. And yeah, I like to say that this is one of the most unique lecture, because growing up, I've been listening to a lot of lectures on cartooning, and this is quite refreshing, because this is a talk. It's a perspective. It's a perspective. Coming from a Filipino American cartoonist. So we're able to see some parallelisms and similarities, on the situation here in the Philippines and on the United States, because we can see that there's a proliferation of fake news, and how it made some became more radicalized, due to this disinformation. And what I really appreciate from Angelo, despite that, he's technically, American because he was born in America, but he chose to went back to his roots, and he drew, he like his like to be honest, if I see his artworks, on the Philippine issues, like, yeah, I didn't thought that, this person is not living in the Philippines. Like, he knew, he's even more knowledgeable on the issues, than than many, Filipinos, based on how it he drew. So at this point, so we are, opening the um the floor to the questions. So anyone would like to ask Angelo, uh, if you want to ask about his work, or if you want to ask for tips on how to draw an editorial cartoon, so you may type here in this comment section, on this chat box. Okay. From Steph Semilia. So, hi Angelo. So I love your artwork and process. So how you ever thought of doing your art using digital apps like Procreate? So also, how do you deal with naysayers? Do you answer them personally?
Oh, well, I'll answer the first one first. Um, I kind of thought of it, but I'm not the greatest with computers and stuff. So I know how to use Photoshop well, and I know several friends of mine, artist friends, who use Procreate. But I think it intimidates me. But I talked to a cartoonist who just had a baby, and he says it's a lot easier, it's a lot faster to use Procreate. So yeah, maybe I will and stuff. I also, since I crosshatch a lot, my eyesight is really bad, and so to save my eyes, I might go to Procreate, so I don't have to do so much crosshatching. Um, so, but yeah, it's a wonderful tool and stuff. But I don't know if the other cartoonists use Procreate, but I may at some point and stuff. But right now, I think I'm anal. I like that kind of detailed cross hatching stuff. But I'm open to using Procreate. I just have to learn how to use it and stuff. But um, how do I deal with naysayers? I haven't really gotten much reaction from my cartoons. Every once in a while, I'll meet a Duterte supporter and stuff. I can tell you a story. Uh, um, at one time I went to an old high school friend. Um, I hadn't seen my friend in like 15 years, and I found out that her mom passed away. So I went to I went to the wake of my friend's mom and stuff. And when I was there, I met my former dentist. I'd been to this dentist for a long time, but then I changed dentists because my wife recommended a dentist who was a lot closer to me. But my former dentist um, made it very clear to me that she was a Duterte supporter and she did not like my cartoons. But I didn't want to get into an argument at my friend's mom's wake. So I kind of kept quiet, but my former dentist made it very uncomfortable for me during the during this wake and stuff, because she made it very clear she did not like my views on Duterte. And so um, yeah, but yeah, I don't know if you've seen the movie Marathon Man. In Marathon Man, there's a scene where Dustin Hoffman is being tortured by a Nazi dentist. I, I spent the night thinking of that scene when I was with my ex dentist, right? So, but I also felt kind of sad because this dentist used to be a friend. and stuff. And I was when she and her husband were in dental school, and they needed somebody to practice cleaning their teeth. I was the person they practiced on. And so, but you know, it's probably similar in America with you know, people who were once friends and then somebody supports Trump and another one doesn't. But yeah, that was my only real experience. I'm sure it's different in the Philippines, but in here, that was my only real experience. It was kind of a sad experience because you know, when you grow apart from a former friend, then you realize that you no longer have anything in common. You know, it was kind of sad for me. I mean, I'm hoping this person's okay and is doing well, but you know, I don't understand how she, you know, she and her husband are supposed to be a Christian, right? But I don't know how they can support extrajudicial killings. You know, I don't see how that's part of the Christian uh, ethos, I guess. So I hope that answers your question. Well, thank you.
Oh, thanks for those answering those questions. We have another question from an anonymous attendee. So the question is, how do you receive? Have you received rather threats or criticisms from fellow Philams who was a different political ideology from you? So how do you deal with that?
Um, yeah, basically that dentist was it. You know, you know. But the
Uh,
lucky thing with me was that I know, you know, I stopped going to that dentist because I think one time
uh,
I had a toothache, and then the dentist I called the dentist and you know, they didn't answer the phone, and so I my wife recommended a dentist that was 5 minutes away, and so I used that dentist. But in terms of like threats, no, no. I think if I stayed with that dentist and I had a toothache, you know, then they could have threatened me and stuff. But no, I've been lucky not to really have had. I haven't even had any hate mail and stuff. I'm guessing that my editor um, does shields me from, either my editor shields me from it, or you know, or I just don't get many hate mail and stuff. So, but you know, that's okay. I really don't want to have hate mail and stuff. So, and I don't think that's, you know, I don't, I don't want to be that scared and stuff. So,
right. So we have another question here. Hello, sir. Do you have any tips for beginner cartoonists trying to develop their own personal style?
yes, just draw. You know, draw. Like I said in part of my speech, go to the library and look at other cartoonists. Find out which cartoonists you love and learn from those cartoonists. And you know, I think everybody does that and stuff. We at first we copy the style of the cartoonists we love, but as we begin to draw, we start developing our own style. And don't look at one cartoonist or artist, look at a lot of artists and cartoonists. So like, you know, fine artists, you know, like for political cartoonists, Goya, Francisco Goya. He was a Spanish artist who did a lot of prints and stuff. Look at, uh, you know, forgot the Pasado, this Mexican printmaker. Wonderful stuff. Um, look at comic book artists like Jack Kirby. You know, there's a lot of great graphic novelists coming out right now. Joe Sacco, he's a wonderful kind of, I don't know how you describe him. He's kind of a political graphic novelist. You know, and then just look at the look at all these cartoonists and then find out which ones you like, and then and learn as much from them as you can, and just keep drawing. Draw all the time and stuff. Try out brushes, try out crocodile pens, try Procreate. Find out what you like, and then do that. It's probably better to do Procreate because I think my cross hatching has destroyed my eyesight. So if you want to do cartoons, but you want to be able to see when you're 70, maybe try Procreate. So thank you.
I think this is second the last question. So good morning, sir. did you ever feel creative block or art block? If so, how do you deal with it?
Oh, yeah, all the time. I go through periods where I just come up with one good, when the cartoon ideas come easy, and then I go through periods where I just can't think of anything good and stuff. So, um, so like some of my in a year and stuff, I'll have periods where I'm really happy with my cartoons, and then I'll be in periods where like why did like why couldn't I thought of something better and stuff. So especially with extrajudicial killings and stuff. It's 6 years worth of extrajudicial killings. Now, I was starting to run out of ways of criticizing it and stuff. So if you look at my later cartoons, you'll see skulls and skulls and skulls and stuff. And sometimes I just did the skulls because I wanted to talk about extrajudicial killings, but I couldn't figure out a new way of criticizing it and stuff. So, um, so you know the way I deal with it is just I I have to submit a cartoon every week. So so whether I have a good idea or a bad idea, I just have to submit a cartoon, right? And so that I think the deadline forces me just to keep going, is to keep producing stuff, and uh, just by producing stuff, at some point, I'll work my way out of my creative block. So I hope that helps. But thank you.
Right. Thank you. This is the last question coming from me. Um, what is your advice to um, what's your advice in general, to cartoonists, living in the Philippines?
Oh,
What's your last message? What's your you like to share?
yeah, I don't really, I don't know if I have I actually admire the cartoonists in the Philippines because they're doing all of this great cartoon. I mean, I don't have advice, but I just, 'cause I don't know the situation in the Philippines in terms of, how cartoonists are doing. But if you're a beginning cartoonist, I would just say keep drawing and stuff. And for the established cartoonists, I would just say keep doing your work and stuff. And be careful, but keep doing your work and stuff. And I think one of the things I would do is, if I was in the Philippines, is to contact the Cartoonist Rights Network International, so that if you happen to get red tagged or anything, that's an organization that helps political cartoonists around the world. So that just I don't know, but um, how safe. I think it depends. If you're a political cartoonist, I would definitely do that, just because I think what political cartoonists are doing is very brave and stuff. But I think, like with all journalists in the Philippines, you have to be careful and stuff. But just in terms of like the technique and the quality of your work, I don't think I have any advice, because I think Philippine cartoonists are doing some wonderful work. Um, and some of the best political cartoons in the world are coming from the Philippines right now and stuff. So, but I think my thing would be just more, just stay safe and stuff. And yeah, if you I think that's about it, I guess. Other than that, I think in terms of like freelancing and getting into the profession and stuff, just try it and stuff. Network with other Filipino cartoonists, so that you guys know each other and stuff, and you know each other's situation, so that you know and act as a support system. I think being a political cartoonist can sometimes be lonely and stuff, right? And if you're and you probably face a lot more um, online hate and criticism, than I would, because but if you're with other if you're in solidarity with other political cartoonists, that kind of group, you can act as each other's support system. So I think that's my advice.
Oh, all right. So um, before I'll present my final presentation in order to close this program. We're first of all, we're really thankful and very grateful to the one and only Angelo Lopez, because to give you guys a context, I think it's already night there in 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 California.
Yeah. I had to. I noticed my screen was getting dark, so I was looking for lights to turn on.
Yeah.
so yeah.
So to give you also another context, the reason why we are holding this webinar a bit earlier than usual, because of the time zone differences. Okay, so as per tradition, as we have been doing in the past two webinars, we will give some workshop or workshop topic for the cartoonists, for the people who are in this webinar and can work on. So do you have any topic on mind, Angelo, so that you can give to serve as a challenge to the participants here? Just any
Oh,
topic.
oh.
Mhm.
I don't know. Let me think. Um, just disinformation in history, I guess. Maybe that's a topic.
Disinformation history.
Yeah.
I think the more is I think it's more on historical distortion. I think
Yes.
that's what
Yes.
you're. Okay, so I'm going to present my screen. If you allow me, I'm gonna share my screen. Can you see my screen already?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
Uh, so for our activity today, um, uh, the participants, can will draw an editorial cartoon. So it's in any way you prefer. Maybe it's digital or traditional, or black and white, or colored, or any size. The topic is basically about historical distortion on what's the effect. How is the historical distortion happening, especially here in the Philippines, and what do you think would be its effect, okay? So it's an optional. You can post it on your FB account or page, which has hashtags saysay ng kasaysayan and hashtag facts first ph. So if you want to without taking notes, you can post a screenshot of this, so you can get all the details of this activity. So kindly submit it to our FB page, which is Pitik Bulag, or email us on pitikbulagph@gmail.com with your name uh, and pseudonym if you want to keep your identity hidden, FB link of the post where you posted your work, your address, just it's okay if it's a city and the province, and mobile number. The deadline for this is tomorrow at the end of the day, which is 11:59 p.m. So Angelo will choose the three best editorial cartoons. It will be posted on Pitik Bulag at 6 p.m. on September 5 or 6. And the top three best cartoons will receive a cash prize of 500 pesos. So we will give this special gift, this book, from one of our Pitik Bulag members. It's Latagao. So here's our previous winner. So he has already received this special gift. But okay, we have held the three webinars already. Um, coming from under the Saysay ng Kasaysayan campaign. So last August 20, Saturday. So yours truly have hold an Editorial cartoon workshop. And last week we have Isang Tasang Kape, the one who introduced Angelo Lopez earlier. He talked about the workshop on comic strip. And in this second half of our webinar series, so we decided to do some to shed or to focus on on diversity in and representation in the field of editorial cartoons. So we have the first one we have from the great cartoonist Angelo Lopez, where he just shared about his work, you know, and tips on how to create an editorial cartoon. So it's like awesome because like it's kind of unique that he was able to also posted a video on his step by step on how to draw on a cartoon. And for next week, um, we're going to witness another talk from Steph B. So the title is Girl with Sharp Pencil, breaking into editorial cartooning. So which is it's kind of great. Right? So join as we listen to Steph B. She's a cartoonist illustrator who have worked on one of the country's top news dailies. So she has drawn some of the most entertaining and insightful cartoons to grace the print and the online media, all from a woman's perspective. Okay, and yeah, this is gonna be an interesting talk. So if you are interested to join this talk, so you may register via Zoom. So we have the tinyurl.com/women cartoonist. So this will be held this Saturday at 4 p.m. Okay, so you may follow us on our respective social media accounts. So we have their yeah, if you want to receive the latest cartoons from the speaker himself, so you may go to his group, which is Angelo Lopez Cartoons. So you may see it on the screen. Um, Follow us also with Isang Tasang Kape, Cartoonist Zach, and most of all, it's Pitik Bulag. So you may see our social media accounts on Facebook, on and Twitter and Instagram. So first of all, just like to to acknowledge, this this event would not be possible without without our partner, which is Facts First Page. So this is a campaign which is aimed to fight disinformation, and particularly under our campaign Saysay ng Kasaysayan, which has been ongoing since August, last month. So this is aimed to fight particularly historical disinformation, and one of the organizations that are part of this initiative, aside from Tanggol Kasaysayan, we have the Abakada, the Project Gonita, we have here the Pitik Bulag. Okay, so if you want to be part of the community, you may join. You just search it on facebook.com/groups/share that Facts First Page. Hey, so stop sharing. So muli nagpapasalamat kami sa mga dumalo to ating workshop, and once again we're grateful, or we thank Angelo Lopez for allotting his time to be the speaker of our of this wonderful workshop. So okay, see you for the next webinar. this Saturday at 4 p.m. So goodbye, and yeah, goodbye everyone. And
Bye. Thank you for coming and for listening to my talk. Thank you all.